to talk today about my favorite subject, entrepreneurship. I happen to be an entrepreneur, in addition to being a professor. Now in Japan, it's very difficult for university professors to have their own other companies or outside work. In the United States, it's common. We have many, many professors who have their own consulting businesses, or they have their own patents and things of this nature. And so I'm one of those kinds of people. I teach marketing at the University of Hawaii, and I'm the president of my own consulting marketing company called Japan America Marketing Institute. And so we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. I do a lot of business between Japan and the United States. I also do a lot of business between China and the United States. I've been visiting China over the last 4 or 5 years also. So let's talk a little bit about foundations of entrepreneur. What's the world of the entrepreneur in the United States? We see new businesses are born every 11 seconds. While we're talking here, there'll probably be about 100 new businesses started in the United States today. Study of influential Americans, they were asked, what do you think is the most important component of the next 21st century? Entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship. That's the lifeblood of any country's economy. All big businesses started small. Businesses just don't pop up by themselves. They start with entrepreneurs. They may change their shape as they go along, but entrepreneurship is the blood of any economy. And I'm very strong on that because I'm going to show you a statistic in a minute that may surprise you. 1 out of every 12 Americans is actively involved in trying to start a business. 8% of the American population are actively involved in starting businesses. Entrepreneurial activity across the globe. Let's take a look at this for a minute. The United States leads the world. 8.5% of our population are involved in entrepreneurship. And then we go down Canada, Israel, Great Britain, Germany, and almost at the bottom we find Japan. 1.6% of the Japanese population is involved in entrepreneurship. Remember what I said before, it's the lifeblood of any country's economy. And something has to be done to raise the interest level. Either the rules have to be changed or whatever is holding people back needs to be changed in order to allow the great brains that live and work in this country to be able to flower and expand. What is an entrepreneur? Well, here's a definition. One who creates a new business in the face of risk and uncertainty for the purpose of achieving profit and growth by identifying opportunities and assembling the necessary resources. I'm going to give you just a very brief example. You saw me when I came in. I was wearing my mask because I have a bad cold. You all saw that. I wore it deliberately. Because while I was upstairs waiting, an idea came to me. You know, almost every space in Japan is covered with advertising. And I had this idea. Here's the next advertising medium. We can laugh, but somebody's going to do it. Think about right now, you go to almost any train station and there's somebody out there handing out Kleenex in a little bag, okay? Who sees that? Just the person who has it. But if the same company gave out this with their advertising on it, everybody would see it. That's what entrepreneurship is all about. Daring to think differently. And daring to be creative in spite of perhaps negative feedback. So, creating a new business in the face of risk and uncertainty. What are some of the characteristics? A desire for responsibility. Preference for moderate risk. Moderate risk. Now, I'm going to tell you a story about somebody who took extreme risk. His name is Fred Smith. Is anybody familiar with who Fred Smith is? He's the founder of FedEx. He wrote a term paper when he was at Yale outlining the company that he wanted to start, the FedEx Corporation. And the professor laughed at him, and he got a C on the paper. But that's not the story I want to tell you about. I want to tell you about the story that when they had a cash flow problem, he didn't know if he could pay his employees. He took all the money, all the cash, and went to Las Vegas and gambled it. And won. And that's why FedEx exists today. He won. If he lost, I wouldn't have a story to tell. Confidence in your ability to succeed. Boy, is that important. Confidence in yourself. And I think that's one of the defining characteristics of successful entrepreneurs. They believe in themselves. A desire for immediate feedback. We don't want to wait until the end of the month. We want to know right now. What's the story? What's going on? High level of energy. I have a high level of energy. Even though I'm sick and I'm 67 years of age, I still move around a lot. I still think a lot. I still do a lot. High level of energy. Future orientation. Oh, is that also important? In our marketing courses, what I like to share with my students is that when we look at marketing, marketers don't live in the past. We may learn from the past, but we don't live in it. We don't live in the present, because for a marketer, the present is too late. It's already happening. So where's the only place that a marketer or an entrepreneur can go? Because I look at entrepreneurs and marketers as essentially the same kind of person. The only place they can go is to the future. To the future. Future orientation. Skilled at organizing, okay, and putting their companies together. For example, I started my consulting company in 1987. But I first joined the faculty at the University of Hawaii. It was one of the very first virtual corporations in 1987. One of the very first. I lived at that time. Cell phones was the highest technology. The cell phones at that time, ladies and gentlemen, were that big. We used to call them bricks. I don't know if any of you remember any of these. They were bricks. But one of the nice things was that people, when you're using a cell phone as your office, they don't know where you are. And I'd be sitting on the beach in Waikiki and talking to somebody in Japan. Where are you at? I'm at my office. Okay? I organized a virtual corporation, and we've expanded in that particular direction. I'm a believer in virtual type of technology. Value achievement over money. Money is just a measure of achievement to an entrepreneur. Okay. What are some of the benefits of small business ownership? Well, the opportunity to create your own destiny. Boy, is that important to me. To create your own destiny. To leave a mark on the world. That is important. And you'll find if you talk to true entrepreneurs, that is very important. To make a difference in the world. To reach your full potential as a human being. What happens, for example, most of you are salarymen or perhaps salary women, whatever. You're good in one particular area, we'll say your work. But that's really generally very narrow. An entrepreneur, on the other hand, has to take on many, many different kinds of responsibilities. So you get a chance to operate at a different level of energy, a different plane, a different dimension. You can bring all your talents to bear, not just the specialized talent that you may have acquired in school. Reap unlimited profits. Contribute to society and be recognized for your efforts. Again, perhaps one of the most famous entrepreneurs is Bill Gates. Well, what has he done in this particular area? He created Bill, I think Melissa's his wife's name, Gates Foundation. $500 million to study AIDS. He's giving back to society. Do what you enjoy and have fun doing it. And that's also important. If you don't have fun, what the hell are you doing it for? I'm standing in front of you, not for all the money that I'm making. I'm standing in front of you because I'm having fun. I happen to be a frustrated nightclub comedian who can't get a job. So what I do is I have captive audiences called students. I like what I do. If you can't do that, as far as I'm concerned, we only live one life. Some people may believe in reincarnation and multiple lives and things like this. I don't know because I don't remember any. All I know is this one. And so if you don't enjoy this one, you don't know what the next one's going to look like. So you better enjoy it today. Obviously, there's some negatives associated with starting your own business. Uncertainty of income, especially at the beginning. You're going to maybe be using your credit cards in order to pay the rent and things of this nature. Okay? That's uncertainty of income. Risk of losing your entire investment. Long hours and hard work. And again, if you like what you're doing, it's not work. Work is the stuff you have to do that you don't like in order to be able to do what you do like. Okay? A lower quality of life until a business gets established. High levels of stress. That's why having fun is so important. It's not a joke. You need balance. You need balance. For example, nobody mentioned this, but I'll also mention it. I write haiku poetry. And I'm a speaker at the International Haiku Conference every other year. I'm one of the main speakers down in Ashia, Japan. I write haiku for balance. You know, I work in it, again, life can be stressful. Well, I need some place to escape. And haiku offers the escape. I have walked from here to Sendai, following Oku no Hosomichi. Yeah. And it's my life plan. One of my goals before I die is to finish Oku no Hosomichi. Okay? High levels of stress. Complete responsibility. I can't blame anybody for what happens to me. No blame game. I'm in charge of my life. I'm in charge of my business. And I make the decisions. If they're wrong decisions, it's a decision that I made. I can't pass the dollar to anybody. Discouragement. Boy, you run into a lot of that when you start your own business. When you announce to your family and friends, I'm going to start my own business, you're going to get a lot of negatives. The mother-in-law and maybe the wife or the husband or the boyfriend or the girlfriend or the kids or even the family dog. What? You're going to start your business? Feeding the fire. Why is entrepreneurship so popular in the United States today? And it is. It is. Entrepreneurs as heroes. We're starting to look at these characters as authentic heroes to the American culture. We got a guy in it, pardon me, I forget his name right now. He started Subway restaurants. 17 years of age. He borrowed $1,000 from a family friend. He wanted to save enough money to go to college. He bought the college. He's an authentic billionaire right now. Okay? I forget it. Like I said, I apologize for forgetting his name. That's one extreme. The other extreme is an old guy. Harlan J. Sanders spent a year and a half knocking on doors of restaurants throughout the southeastern part of the United States, living in his car, asking people, going in and talking to the restaurant owner, saying, if you take this recipe, you pay me 6% franchise fee and things of this nature. He knew, as anybody who's ever lived in the southeastern part of the United States knows, every restaurant has its own special recipe. So they laughed at him. He went to over 1,000 restaurants. Finally, somebody said yes. What did that franchise become? Kentucky Fried Chicken. Okay? So we teach that. We study those stories. That's one of the reasons why we see such an interest in entrepreneurship. Education. Education. We're seeing MBAs that are focused purely on entrepreneurship, undergraduate courses to encourage entrepreneurship. Many universities are sponsoring business plans. At the University of Hawaii, where I teach, we have a $50,000 prize for business plan. $50,000 prize. So you're seeing a number of educational activities and institutions that are getting on the bandwagon, the entrepreneurship bandwagon. Demographic and economic factors. Well, we've got some major changes. And change, inside change, ladies and gentlemen, lies opportunity. Opportunity. For example, the baby boomers. The baby boomers, the largest single market segment in history, if you will. Right now, about 76 million of them. They were born between 1946 and 1964. Okay? They're getting close to retirement. And they offer many, many different opportunities. I'm going to share with you an example that when I give this particular lecture at the University of Hawaii, at this point, I always ask my students, who wants to become very wealthy in the next 10 years? Anybody here want to become very wealthy? Who wants to become rich? Okay. That's what wealthy means, rich. Become a funeral home director. Why? You're going to have 76 million people die in the next 15 years. Well, right now in the United States, we don't have enough funeral directors right now to handle the business. Where I live in Hawaii, we're 50th in the 50 states in terms of per capita per population of funeral directors. So there is. And another very interesting thing about the baby boomers, they don't want an ordinary funeral. They don't want to die and be put in the ground. They want to go into outer space. Or if you go visit the web, go type in cemeteries, you'll see virtual cemeteries. You can buy your own website right now, and when you die, it pops up, and there you are for the rest of history. Okay? Just make sure you collect your money up front. So, demographics. Shift to a service economy is also a major thing. As a matter of fact, in the United States, I think it's right now about 75–78% of our GDP is from the service sector. We're losing our manufacturing base, and it's being replaced by the service sector. Technological advancements, obviously, the World Wide Web and all the communications technology has changed the way the game is played. Independent lifestyles. I want to be able to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, and with whom I want to do it. I think if you ask any entrepreneur, you'll get essentially the same answer. E-commerce and the World Wide Web, again, has facilitated. One of the interesting things about the web, you can have a big, huge company, and you can have a small one-man operation. And on the web, they're created equal. One screen wide. The big companies come down to one screen, and the small companies go up to one screen. One screen wide. You're created equal on the World Wide Web. Here's another very interesting thing about the web. As far as a money-making formula. Has anybody bought anything off the web? Anybody purchased anything? You pay first. And then a couple weeks later, a couple of days later, you get the material. If you're a smart entrepreneur, you don't have to use your money to buy the raw materials. You use your customers. You don't have the products when they buy. You take their money and you go out and buy the raw materials and you manufacture the product. It's called OPM, other people's money. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the success of the web. International opportunities, of course, global. Okay. Diversity of entrepreneurship. Young entrepreneurs, and I just gave you an example of one of mine, and there are many, many others. 18-year-olds starting businesses and reaping fortunes. Women in the United States, women are becoming entrepreneurs. They bumped into the glass ceiling. They can't go any further, so they're just going out on their own. I'm also in the direct sales business, okay? As part of my marketing consulting, I'm in the direct sales business. And in that particular industry in the United States, ladies and gentlemen, 73% of the salespeople in that business are women. Women. And when you're an independent contractor, again, you are by definition an entrepreneur. Minority-owned businesses. Again, in the United States, the government has encouraged minority ownership. We have certain tax breaks, we have certain grants and loans, low interest rate loans, to encourage the start of entrepreneurship. Immigrant entrepreneurs. Here's a very important fact. A legally arrived immigrant in the United States, legally arrived, is 4 times more likely to become a millionaire than a person born in the United States. Think about that. You want to immigrate? I'll charge a fee, but you want to immigrate? Part-time entrepreneurs. We find a lot of people will start out part-time, keep their regular job, pay the bills and keep the wife happy and things of this nature, and then as their business grows, then they'll gradually go into it on a full-time basis. Home-based businesses. Again, it used to be in the United States, because of the very high cost of living, that it took 2 jobs, husband and wife working, in order to have a level of lifestyle that their parents had when only the father worked. But we're finding today it's 2.5 jobs. What's the half job? The home-based. Of course, with technology, you can operate from the home these days. Family businesses are also sources of entrepreneurship. Co-preneurs. Co-preneurs are partners, strategic partners who go together on ventures. Corporate cast-offs. These are the outsized and the downsized, and the people who have been let go or have no future and things of this nature. And they're finding a way out through entrepreneurship. And then corporate dropouts. I was one of those. I was introduced, in your reading, you read about my episode at Coca Cola, but I'm actually a retired military officer. I spent 22 years in the United States Air Force, and I rose from the bottom to the top in those 22 years. And then I retired at age 38. 38, some people are just getting started. And I went to work for Coca Cola Company. And I decided I didn't like that life. I just don't like it. So I walked out. And fortunately, I was able to, again, get selected for the faculty at the University of Hawaii at that time, and I started my own business. And I haven't looked back at corporate America since. I've been a consultant to corporate America, AT&T and people of that nature, but you would never find me working in one of those little cubicles. Where are the entrepreneurial opportunities in the United States? And here are some of them. We talk about services industry. Again, we're going in that particular direction. It would be natural for that particular sector to be influenced. Retail. A lot of the direct sales you'll find in retail. Wholesale, manufacturing, construction, financial, and miscellaneous. Small businesses make up 99% of the businesses in the U.S. By our definition, legal definition in the United States, any company with 499 employees or less is classified as small business. They're eligible for all the loans and everything else. 499 or less. So therefore, you see, small business is really the mainstay of the United States of America. 53% of the private workforce. They create more jobs than big business. That's one of the problems that I have with my graduates. They all want to go to work for big companies. Yet it's the small, medium-sized companies that are actually creating the jobs in the U.S. today. They're leaders in offering training and advancement opportunities to workers. The small companies. We produce 51% of the nation's private GDP. 47% of business sales. Create 4 times more innovations per R&D dollar than medium-sized companies, and 24 times more innovations than large companies. The brains of America, ladies and gentlemen, are in the small companies. The small companies. Now, obviously, we've got problems. And as you can see, we have a small business survival rate where again, we find a lot of small businesses surviving after a number of years, and we'll get into that in a minute. Go ahead. 24% of small businesses fail after 2 years. 51% will fail in 4 years. 63% in 6 years. Why? Number one, management incompetence. Wrong person for the job for whatever reason. Okay, management incompetence is one of the major reasons. Lack of experience. You've been a technician all your life. Maybe you became a manager in an office, and I like to use managers because managers don't do anything anymore. Somebody answers the telephone for them. Somebody's a gatekeeper who keeps people out. There's a janitor who comes in and cleans up. Well, when you're an entrepreneur, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to do all of those. And a lot of them cannot make the transition. I've seen some managers who did not know how to use a telephone. because there's too many dials and buttons and everything else on it. Okay, we've gone beyond just hello and dial. You know, you got the World Wide Web at your fingertips. Okay, or financial controls. We find many small businesses, business managers do not know how to read financial statements, balance sheets, and income statements, or how to create them. Failure to develop a strategic plan, and I also give another seminar on planning. I'm a believer in planning. People who fail to plan are planning to fail. It's that simple. A plan is a roadmap to lead you to success. Okay? There's no other way you can do it. You can fail because of uncontrolled growth. You didn't plan on the demand for your particular product. Apple Computer has almost gone out of business twice because they were successful. When the Macintosh first came out, they under-anticipated the demand, so they cut off their supply channels. We're only going to make 1 million of these. 2 million people wanted them. People had to wait. And then when they came out with the iPod, they had the same problem. They didn't anticipate the demand for the product. They cut off their distribution system, if you will, the global supply system, without understanding what the real demand would be. Okay? Poor location, improper inventory control. Inventory takes up 25 cents of the company dollar in the United States. 25 cents. And inventory is a strange animal. First of all, inventory disappears from you. You know how it disappears? The employees take it home. The leading cause of pilferage in the United States are not shoplifters. They're the employees. Inventory can spoil. Inventory can be damaged. I can tell you horror stories about damaged Coca Cola in warehouses, falling down on people and things of this nature. So the small business who does not have a handle on their inventory may lose it. Incorrect pricing, they don't know how to price, inability to make the transition from businessman or salaryman, if you will, salaryman thinking to entrepreneurial thinking. There is a new dimension. It's a wider dimension. Like I said, you're going to have to pick up the garbage. You might have to clean the toilets. You might have to answer the phones. You might have to go out and get some copies made, or you yourself will have to make the copies at 11 o'clock at night until you can get rolling. And some people can't make that transition. How do we avoid small business failure? Number one, know your business in depth. Develop a solid business plan. Manage your financial resources. Know what you have and manage that wisely. Be able to read a financial statement. Dude, what's this? What's this inventory turnover? Be able to read it. Learn to manage people effectively. Keep in tune with yourself. You can see right now that I'm a rather humorous, so I try to keep humor in my lectures. That's because I don't take myself seriously, ladies and gentlemen. I think the kiss of death starts when you start to take yourself seriously. I have a different perspective of the world, perhaps, than a lot of people do. Keep in tune with yourself. Get out there and smell the roses. I happen to live in Hawaii. I don't know if you're all familiar with Honolulu. And if you've ever been to Hawaii, you've probably been to Hanauma Bay. Well, I'm the guy who lives next door to Hanauma Bay. I love it. Last week, I watched the whales breaching the water between Molokai and Oahu. That's keeping in tune with yourself. I live in Hawaii not by accident. I went to Hawaii first in 1957 on my way to Japan because we didn't have jets. We had to go from island to island to island. And I landed in Hawaii in 1956. And we were there for about 12 hours. And I said to myself, self, this is where you're going to die. That was 1956. I got back there in 1972 and I've been there ever since.
Suppose if I'll get out of my job, until because Japan, you are well aware, notoriously is very long sales cycle even better.
Sure.
After the selling cycle happens, only that money comes in.
Yeah.
So what would be the appropriate time? Maybe
well, first of all, what you do is you save up enough money to handle you through the introductory phase. Because the minute you open the door does not mean you're going to make money. So you have, as an entrepreneur, and this is where business planning comes in. You take a look at your particular situation, maybe your industry and your product, and it may very well be that the break even is a year down the road. Well, then you better have enough money to keep the electricity on a year, down the road. So you need to do your analysis of the trends of the sales and the activity in your industry. The thing that you brought up, a good point. Many entrepreneurs start their business on a spur of the moment, without thinking. For some reason or other, they get mad at the boss or whatever it is, they quit, and they go out and start their own business, and they haven't done any thinking. So you sit down, you have the when you have a full-time job right now, you have the luxury of being able to take some of that time and put it into thinking so that you can start to prepare. But that's the only way that I can say right now. Any others?
The next question, please.
Regarding the part-time entrepreneur, I will start my business maybe next month inside the company, but different job. I don't want to do company job. I need to because I'm only one person. Because if I do the company job, rest of the time is my time.
Okay.
But in order to take a risk, I have to contribute to the company. Otherwise, I have to invest in my money to the rent house and organize the copy and whatever. What do you think? Do I have to stay in the company to contribute the job and until I get my business going through, or I stay in the company to the more marketing job before I take off some three.
Are you married?
No, yes.
You are married?
Yes.
Is your wife rich?
Do I, no.
Well,
do I have to divorce?
This goes back to essentially what I shared with this gentleman, is that number one, you sit down and you try to understand what do you really want to do, okay? And then you try to lay out a roadmap of the steps that are necessary. It may very well be, what kind of business do you want to start?
Import trading, actually.
Trading company?
And my company is the advertisement company, so different.
Okay. Trading company it's going to take you some time to make money. I know, personally, because I export noni. You know what noni is? I export that from the Hawaii to Japan. And sometimes getting paid is difficult. You can't find the people that you're doing business with. But that's another story. The thing about export-import is that it's going to take you time. It may take you 3, 4, 5 years before you can show a profit. But export-import can also be done from home, over the internet, by telephone. You don't physically have to be there. You just have the right connections. So it's a kind of business you can do at night, or you can do from your keitai when you go to lunch or something along that line. So you lay out a roadmap, and like I said, it'll take you several years, unless you have a lot of money to invest up front. It'll take you several years to build it up. So you stay with the cash flow because you need it in order to live. Typically, the advice I give people in your situation is that once you're making 2 times your annual salary, when you're making 2 times your annual salary from your new work, then you can quit.
I see. Thank you very much.
2 times. Because you're going to lose half of, when you quit, you're going to lose your daytime income. So you need to have double. That way you'll have enough to get through.
Thank you.
Okay, then let's continue on with Act 2. And we're going to talk about a little bit about what goes on inside the minds of entrepreneurs. Creativity and innovation. What's the difference? Creativity, the ability to develop ideas and to discover new ways of looking at problems and opportunities. This was creativity. Sitting upstairs. That was creativity. What's innovation? The ability to apply this to something to enhance people's lives. Well, what could we do? Well, I could probably take this to maybe a direct marketing company, and again, we could put some advertising on here. Or we could go to a private company and maybe get them to sponsor it. Probably the way that if I was to follow up on this, what I would do is I would just have some creativity. I would let people draw their own masks. or their own faces or their own things, okay? That way you create what's called buzz. And buzz is word of mouth, and people start looking. Because if I went to a company today, right now, if I went to a company and said, gave them this idea, they laugh at me. They laugh at me. But if we allow some creative people to do their own, you start to set a pattern, you see, and then maybe 2 or 3 months from now, the companies will see the idea. Give you a good example, another example of creativity. Belly buttons. Belly buttons. In the United States, all young ladies show their belly buttons. I don't know well, the Japanese ladies come over to Hawaii, they show their belly buttons too. Well, guess what? You got a lot of space there. It's now being used for personal advertising. There are ladies walking around with advertisements on their midriffs. We used to call them midriffs. That's the space between the belly button and the boobs. Okay? Creativity, innovation. Yeah, ability. A lot of people are creative, but they're unable to make the transition to innovation, to be able to put that idea into practice in order to enrich people. Here's the 20-cent definition of entrepreneurship. Disciplined, systematic process of applying creativity and innovation to the needs and the opportunities in the marketplace. They connect the creative ideas with the purposeful action and structure of a business. And I'll just continue on with this. And by the way, this didn't exist an hour ago. It's all brand new. So what I might try to do is see if I can get a patent on it, because I want to try to protect my idea. You see, that would be the next step, to try to be able to control my creativity through some kind of patent or so. Then I could license that patent out to other people. Okay? Failure. Here's what a lot of people don't understand. Failure, ladies and gentlemen, is part of life. I failed. When I first went out and started my business, I went into real estate in Hawaii. And I thought I was going to be able to, make my fortune in real estate at that time. Well, unfortunately, President Ronald Reagan didn't agree with me. And what happened was interest rates in the United States went up to 21%. You couldn't buy or sell a home, except you had to be creative. I took jewelry as down payments, almost everything in order to try to stay alive, but I wasn't able to. So I closed the doors. I closed the doors of my company, and that's when we jumped into the consulting business. Interestingly enough, 3 years later, I sold 2 hotels in Waikiki to a Japanese gentleman. 2 hotels. After I went out of the business. So you never know when opportunity is going to strike you. For every 3,000 new products, 4 make it to the development stage, 2 are launched, and 1 becomes a success. So if you want to be successful, you need a lot of ideas. And that's one of the things, this is one of the things I find fault with American companies. We did a study a number of years ago. I don't know if these numbers are still true today, but we did a study of Toyota, and we found out that employee suggestion program, we wanted to analyze that. We found out that at that time, there was about a 96% participation rate by employees in their suggestion program. 96%. So only 4% didn't participate in a year's time. Adoption rate of those particular suggestions was around 90%. About 90%. The reward, the average reward, was 400 yen. That was the reward that they got. But Toyota got 90% of 96% ideas. We looked at the American industry, and we found out that in the American automotive industry, so the employee suggestion program was on the order of about 2%. Only about 2% people participated in the program. A 90% adoption rate. And a $600 reward. $4, $600. Okay? Maybe this is why why we've had problems in our manufacturing process in America. I remember again when I was stationed in downtown Detroit, Michigan, for 3 years, and I was on a special assignment from the Department of Defense to service contracts in the state of Michigan, $6 billion a year, and most of them were with the automotive companies. Ford and Chrysler and General Motors. We were buying tanks, and we were buying Jeeps, we were buying all kinds of, and after parts and things of this nature. About $6 billion a year. Part of my job was to go out and visit the plants. And I remember visiting one of the Chrysler plant, actually, and I like to wander around. I'm a very curious person. I think curiosity is also a hallmark of being an entrepreneur. Very curious, and I met a black gentleman who was working on a production line. I started talking to him. Worked there for about 35 years. Put 3 kids through college, working the same job. And we got around and I started talking, and I was very interested in suggestions and improvements, the subject that got around to that, he says, you know, I know how to improve the production line. I said, well, how? He said, you see this table right here? He says, I have to pick up the part from this table and put it over on this table. If I just move this table over here, I could speed up the production. I said, why did you do it? He says, nobody's ever asked me. Okay? On an average, new products account for 40% of company sales. That's the lifeblood. You can't be a one-product company anymore. You've got to come to the market. You've got to keep your pipeline full of ideas through innovation and creativity. You must have some kind of creative effort within your company. Okay? Because you need the ideas. You need to keep the pipeline full of ideas. Can we learn to be creative? Of course we can. By overcoming paradigm. What's a paradigm? Paradigm is the way we look at the world. Your paradigms, living in Japan, are totally different than my paradigm of looking at the world. Okay? By overcoming our prejudices, because paradigms do have prejudices, and suspending conventional thinking long enough to consider new and different alternatives. We have what we call right-brain creative thinkers. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres, the left and the right. The right is where creativity resides. I happen to be more right-brain oriented than I am left-brain. Okay? So right brain. Always ask, is there a better way to do this? Inquisitive, curious, challenging. By the way, if you ever want to defeat a company, if you ever want to really cause a company to fail, follow the written rules and don't deviate. I guarantee you'll bring that company right down if you follow the rules. Because most of them are contradictory to each other, and you know they sort of just follow the rules. But if you challenge, you see, in those kinds of companies, if you challenge the rules, you're liable to be fired. Okay, so anyways, is there a better way to do this? Challenge, custom, routine, and tradition. The worst words that I can hear from anybody is, we've always done it that way. My answer to them is, so what? So what? I don't live in the past. Circumstances change. Life changes every single day. And we must be flexible to adjust to change. Okay? Right-brained creative thinkers are reflective. This is a little bit about my haiku. This is why I write haiku. This is why I study Japanese poetry. This is why I go walking in the woods. Right here. You'd be surprised. Maybe some of you might have had the same experience. You know, it's quite common in the United States. When's the time you have the best idea? When you're in the toilet. You're right. When you're in the toilet. Here's my answer to that. I've got about 3 of these around the house at strategic locations. It's my recorder. Okay? So when an idea pops to me, I have this handy. Because again, at my particular age, ladies and gentlemen, I don't have any short-term thinking left. I hear something in 30 seconds, it's gone. That's why I have to be truthful, because if I lied a lot, I wouldn't know what the hell I was saying. But this allows me to record ideas when they come to me. Okay? And I take this when I'm walking or wherever I am. This is always with me. We reflect. We think about things. We look at different ways. We play mental games. What if? What if this happened? What if that happened? And that can lead us down a brand new road also. Right-brain creative thinkers realize that there may be more than one right answer. I see this all the time, especially from what I call these logical left brain people, that there's only one true right answer. Well, again, the answer lies in how we look at the world, our paradigm. There can be many, many, many right answers. And we have to be willing to maybe listen to somebody else's right answer. See mistakes as pit stops on the way to success. In other words, if you make a mistake or if you fail, so what? You learn something from that. Okay? And if you don't learn something from it, then you deserve to fail. But if you've learned something from it, all it is an educational experience. Don't take failure personally. Relate seemingly unrelated ideas to a problem. Again, I had a problem. I'm coughing a lot. I've noticed, again, in Japan, you know, you've got advertising on almost everything, except you don't have advertising where I've seen it in Hawaii. We have advertising in men's bathrooms. So you have a captive audience of about maybe a minute. Maybe for people like me, 2 minutes. I'm standing there looking at a blank wall. Now there's advertising on the blank wall. There's even a company in Honolulu that specializes in digital advertising. The message changes while you're standing there. See, what they're doing is they're taking seemingly unrelated ideas and addressing it. Innovation, creativity. Dare to be different. They have helicopter skills. What's a helicopter skill? The ability, as you know, helicopters can rise vertically and they can hover. The problems are down here. You develop helicopter skills, you're able to rise outside of the problem and look down on it. You'll get a different perspective. I call it many times macro thinking rather than micro thinking. Rise above the problem, and maybe you start to see the relationships and the connections and things of that nature. Left brain or right? Well, we need both. Requires both left and right brain thinking. I don't want to see too many, people with just the right brain walking down the street. Their head will be like that. Right brain draws on divergent reasoning, the ability to create a multitude of original and diverse ideas. That's where the creativity side is. But we need to implement. Left brain counts on the convergent reasoning, the logic ability to evaluate these ideas and choose the best solution. See, a right brain can just pop off ideas all day long. It's the left brain that has to say, hey, this is the good one. So we need both. We need both. What are some of the barriers to creativity? Again, searching for the one right answer when there are many right answers. Focusing on being logical. Boy, I don't know if you remember Star Trek with Mr. Spock. Mr. Spock was the most logical non-human, I think, in the universe. Okay, and you can see that, that he didn't have a lot of flexibility, although he was right most of the time. But that can be a barrier to creativity. Blindly following the rules. Well, that's what it says. We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to do it. No, that's a barrier. I just practiced a little one with you just a few minutes ago. We ran out of time because I spoke too fast. We had to put on the next slide. What did I do? I asked you if you had any questions rather than sitting around everybody looking at each other. We were different. Okay, we operated a little bit differently. We didn't blindly follow the rules of just standing here waiting for that to be done. Again, just to give you an idea of what planets I live on. I was very interested. I'm getting to the point where standing in line is bothering me. I don't like to stand. I don't have too many years left to live. I don't want them all standing in line. So I thought about starting a company. Just in line. Something like just in time. And what I was doing is I was going to go and find a lot of old people. Because old people like to stand in line. They have nothing else to do. They wake up in the morning, they go stand in a line, they talk to somebody, then they go to another line, talk to somebody. So I shared this idea, believe it or not, with some colleagues in Hawaii. And I was listening to National Public Radio. And guess what? Somebody already had that idea. In Brazil, there are some 50,000 people whose job it is to stand in line. Because Bureaucracy is so slow, it takes 3 days to get a driver's license. Standing in line 3 days. So they've got these old people and they go out and hire them to stand in line. And when it's their turn, they get them on a phone and come in and stand and take their place. But blindly following the rules, it can slow the business down. Yet if you challenge the rules in some companies, like I said, you're liable to get into trouble because you're shaking things up. Bureaucrats, and there are government bureaucrats and there are corporate bureaucrats. Bureaucrats love stability. That's how they're able to survive. No change. Yet you're the entrepreneur, you come in, you're suggesting change, you're liable to get into some difficulties. Constantly being practical. Boy, that's also another barrier to creativity. Being practical. Dream a little bit. You don't have to be practical all the time. Thinking that play is frivolous. You know, oh, I'm too mature to play, or I'm too intelligent to play, or I have too high a job to play. Well, I have a chocolate Labrador dog. She's 11 years old, and she's the love of my life, but don't tell my wife. Her name is Satchi. It means happiness. Happiness. And twice a day, I take her out. And I take tennis balls and I throw them, and she loves them. She goes out and chases them. And here I am out in the middle of the street, you know, this dirty old man, whatever it is, and people are driving by and looking at an old man playing with an old dog. But I have fun. So does she. I have fun. It relieves stress, opens my creativity. Thinking that playing is frivolous, I think, is very dangerous. Becoming overly specialized is a barrier to creativity because you only tend to look into your special activities, where you're good at doing. But again, a lot of times, the answer, the solution to your problem may be out here someplace. But if you're focused only in this channel, you'll never find the answer. Avoiding the ambiguity. Everything has to be clear. Why? The world isn't clear. You don't have to have an answer right now. It doesn't have to be a specific right now. Most of the world we deal with deals with ambiguity. Fearing looking foolish because you're going to try something new. Now, you know, I could have been a very reserved university professor, especially Japanese professors, they're all reserved. And if I came out, you know, if I was a Japanese guy coming out with this, you wouldn't understand what was going on. Fearing mistakes and failure. Again, if you're afraid to fail, you're never going to leave your box. And the world exists outside of our box. That's what the answers are. Believing that you're not creative. There's a theory called expectancy theory. Expectancy theory. And the basis of this theory is we become what we expect to become. We become what we think about the most. What we think about, we will become. If we can't do it, we're not going to do it. If we can do it, or we think we can do it, we're going to do it. It all begins up here, ladies and gentlemen. Tips for enhancing creativity. How do we bring creativity into a company? Number one, expecting it. Setting an atmosphere inside the company. One of the things I like, you go to Silicon Valley, it's changed a little bit now, but Silicon Valley in California, my son works there, is noted, many of the companies are noted for their Friday night beer parties. And on Friday night, right after work, they bring the pizza, bring the beer in, and everybody sits down, and that's where a lot of the creative ideas come from, and the companies support and encourage those particular parties as part of their internal creative operations. Expecting and tolerating failure. Encouraging it. You can have employee suggestion programs and things of this nature that would lead to that. Viewing problems as challenges. Challenges. Providing creativity training such as brainstorming. Providing support. Like I said, that's what these Silicon Valley companies do on these Friday night beer busts. Is they're supporting the creative avenue, if you will, a creative venue, if you will. rewarding creativity. Not only through dollar rewards, but through recognition and acknowledgement and things of this nature. Most creative people are not creative because of the dollars. It's something inside of them, the desire to achieve or the desire to be recognized. And just a little pat on the back. I'll give another example of that, something close to that. Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte was a very interesting guy. And you know, he went to Russia and tried to invade Russia, and then the rough Russian winter, you know, defeated him. It wasn't the Russians that defeated him, it was the winter. So then he went back to France, and then a couple of years later he decided he wanted to go back again and try again. And so he went to his former soldiers, his army, and he said, hey, we're going to go back to Russia again. He said, no, we're not going to go back. We got frostbitten the last time, we didn't do anything, we're not going back. And Napoleon came up with a way of, again, acknowledging and rewarding creativity. He invented something, he came up with this idea, and he said, if you go to Russia with me, and if you die, I'm going to award you the Legion of Merit, which will be France's highest honor, and your family will be proud of you. And they all signed up. I'm a retired military officer. I have ribbons like this. I was in combat in Vietnam and things of this nature. Why did I stay? Because I got a lot of ribbons. I didn't get to make a lot of money, but I got a lot of ribbons, a lot of medals. You reward achievement and creativity. Modeling the creative behavior. Again, practicing what you preach, if you will. Tips: allow yourself to be creative. Give your mind fresh input. One way you can do that, again, I don't know about in Japan, because you probably write the same thing. One interesting story, again, I do a lot of observational research. I like to go into train stations, and you watch the train stations, the people come rushing down, and they all go to the same place. It's the middle car, you know, the sixth car middle entrance. And they'll stand there. Why? Because when it gets to Shinjuku Station, they'll be right next to the stairs and they can go up. They'll stand in that line for 20 damn years. They won't know the people in back of them or in front of them, yet they're the same people. Okay? What I suggest is go to work differently. Walk to work. It's an interesting thing. You drive down the street every day, walk down it. It'll be a totally different street. Totally different street. Okay? Keep a journal handy to record your ideas. That's where my recorder comes in handy. Read books on stimulating creativity. I read books. I read biographies and autobiographies of successful people. I want to know how they got there. Maybe I can model what they've done. Take some time off. Play. Techniques. Brainstorming. You've all heard it. The only problem with brainstorming is nobody really practices it right. And we don't have the time here today, but there are a number of different books that show you how to do it right. It's not just getting ideas. There's some other techniques that you also need to employ, but it's a great way of stimulating creativity. Mind mapping. I do that a lot. Most of us learn to write in a linear, for example, this right here. This is in a linear format, okay? So if you take multiple notes, you've got multiple pages. Mind mapping is you just take a circle right in here, and you put the topic, whatever the topic is, and then you draw out little arrows like a Ferris wheel, and what happens is you can write all your notes on that, and pretty soon all your notes are on one page, and you can see connections. It's hard to see connections when you're on page 6 and page 9. But by mind mapping, you can see the big picture, the helicopter picture, if you will. Rapid prototyping, going from idea into model as quickly as possible.
In your creativity presentation, you said that something along the lines that there is not always one right answer.
That's correct.
Yeah. So as a manager, if a staff member comes to you with a proposal, for example, something I've tried to do quite often, is not to accept the first proposal. Mm-hmm. Of course, you don't always want to discourage your people, but if you accept it first time, that cuts off any kind of improvement or any kind of creativity. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we should say to them, or I don't know if this is a good idea or not, I'm asking you. You send them back and say, why don't you try and think of that, or why don't you try and think of that?
What I would do,
a bit of creativity.
see, what you're doing is you're bringing your bias in when you're saying, why don't you do this or that? That's
yeah.
your bias coming in as the manager. Well, at the beginning, when you give the assignment, you say to him, Suzuki-san, I'd like to have 3 or 4 different ideas from you.
Yeah.
So you've already laid the groundwork for 3 or 4 different ideas. But if they do one and they bring it to you and you say, well, why don't you look at this? You're forcing, and of course they're going to look into this because that's the answer that they feel you want. That may not be the right answer. It may be worse than the original one they brought you. So, but up front, if you say, give me 3 or 4 different ways to look at this, then, you know, you're saving the face, and then that person does have the creativity available to them to provide the 3 or 4 answers.
This is something I found very difficult here in Japan, working in Japan, and now I'm working in China. So for me it was always, and I worked in Germany before that. So in Germany I would be able to give a brief and say, okay, this is what I'd like, and it runs.
Yeah.
I give the same brief in Japan or in China, you don't get the same result.
Do you know the difference between high context and low context cultures? Germany is what's called a low context culture. And you have to be specific and technical in that kind of culture. In high context culture, the answers are embedded in the surroundings and in not the words themselves. And so a high context culture, you have to understand nuances. Rather, in Germany, it's black and white. It's technical, it's a formula. In Japan and China, it's what's not said many times is more important than what is said. I just suggest, there's a number of books about high context, low context cultures. That may be of interest to you. Any others?
Would you recommend any books?
Yeah, mine. I wrote 2 books published in Japan. Unfortunately, they're out of print. But I have some at home.
Yeah.
And since they're out of print, they're very, very valuable. They're collector's items. I'll give them to you about $300 a book.
You can give me one in drive and I will sell it for you.
I didn't bring any with me. Any others? That's a good answer. I like that.
Next please. Next question.
Because I'm doing sales in Japan for last so many years.
Any others? Well, guess what? I'm going to let you go 5 minutes early. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that I shared some information with you and that you all will enjoy your tour of duty or association with Anaheim and Lambert. And who knows, you might see me again. Who knows?